Okay. Okay. So good evening. We're getting started. Today is March 19, 2026, and it is 10:42 p.m. U.S. Central Time. My name is Rinaldo J. Aguiar Marcano, and this is demo 128. So D128. And I just have a few small updates. I don't have many things. But I think these are interesting updates. So let me start by saying, the mystery of the demo 126 that you will see missing is not missing. It's just that it's a demo that I did not publish. It's recorded and it's stored in the Google Cloud storage bucket, and it's actually a very important demo. But I intended it to be for law enforcement when they eventually, find these things. So I'm not going to make it public because I think it's for strategic reasons. But I think it's a gold mine for law enforcement. So if anybody from law enforcement ever gets across this recording, I would recommend look in the Google Cloud storage bucket that I have, that it's tied to the Call Mobile Gmail address. And in there you will see the folder for the demo D126, and that it's probably one of the most important demos for this area in Katy, Fort Bend, Texas. It was recorded recently. So anyhow, yes. So I have a few things. So the first one is I think I solved a mystery that was puzzling me for the last few months. Let me tell you what the mystery was, right? So the mystery was that if you look at Robert Mueller's property in Lake Point Estates, and he's my neighbor, like I live 300 feet away from him. If you look at his property, in the geo index of Diosdado Cabello, he is marked with around 40,000 points in crypto payments, which is not, it's a lot of money, but for a person of his stature, it doesn't seem a lot. Like to give you an idea, right? I don't know. Eduardo Hurtado has like 2 million points, right? So that always bothered me. Like it didn't compute, right? In my mind, I couldn't understand why a person of his stature would, do this for so little money. I guess the logic that I was applying is that, if Eduardo Hurtado is making, 100 times more. Assume for a second, right, that it's 100 times more in crypto than Robert Mueller. Like it didn't seem logic to me, right? It's kind of the same situation that I was seeing with Judge Telfair when I saw that his private practice had like 12,000 points, and I see that he is creating void orders to kidnap children with the courts, right? So it didn't make sense. But I think I saw why. So I've noticed that, and I've noticed this, like I found multiple examples of this, okay? But I'm going to tell you the pattern. I'm going to give you one example only, which is Robert Mueller, but there are others, okay? So in the case of Robert Mueller, I think, and this is a theory, but authorities should probably look into this, right? The working hypothesis is that they mark them in a different way. And this is, I'm saying this because after I tell you this, I have to tell you that I have to revise my hypothesis because before I say something like, the judges are running this, I think that's not the case anymore. From what I'm saying, right? And I said that because it seemed to me like the judges having the crypto payments stored in master plan communities was a more secure method of storing the crypto payments, right? So I figured, well, that must mean that, the judges are more important than Robert Mueller. That was my logic at the time, right? Well, let me tell you the finding. The finding is that, for example, in Austin, there is a road or a boulevard called Mueller Boulevard. And it has a lot of government buildings. And the buildings are marked in the crypto payments index of Diosdado Cabello with points, right? So the hypothesis is that this is a ledger this is one of the points in the ledger of Robert Mueller, right? And this would be actually a more secure crypto wallet than the judges, because his points are stored in government buildings, not in master plan communities. I mean, if you think about it, it's more difficult to build a government building because that would require having government power, right? To place that building there, who can do that? Only a government, right? But a master plan community, anybody with the money can place it anywhere, right? Like if you have the money to buy the land and to build the houses, you can build it, right? You don't have to be a government. But to have, I don't know, to give an example, the health services building in Austin, right? To have control of that building, you have to be the government, right? So the hypothesis is, the theory is that these government officials or former government officials have their wallets. These are really distributed wallets, and this is also what makes them more secure, right? Because the points are not stored in the ledger for his crypto positions, are not stored in a single property. They are stored in multiple properties, and in his case, they are stored in multiple governmental properties, which is even more secure, right? So I don't know. It seems to me like a more secure storage, right, for his positions. Now I have to tell you, this of course makes me want to revise my theory, because this means that the judges are not. I mean, the ones that are running these are the intelligence officers. I guess not intelligence officers, but like the intelligence high level, right? Like I would call them a statesman, right? Like Robert Gates, and I know Robert Gates is highly respected, so that's why I don't mention him a lot, because I know it's a topic that could cause skepticism, right? So I don't. I guess that would be the authorities to talk about that if they want to talk about that. But I know for a fact that the connection of Robert Gates comes from Travis Kalanick, whom I talked about in the previous demo. Robert Gates went to work for Travis Kalanick at Uber, right? That's the connection. That's where he came in. Yeah, so people like Robert Mueller and Gates, right? Robert Gates are the ones that I think, right, that have more prominence in this network than the judges, because their crypto positions. And the same observation, like with Robert Gates, his house in California is also marked in the index, but with not too many points. I think it had something like 80,000 points. It has more points than Robert Mueller's, but not nothing that would justify enrolling him into a network like this, right? But now, having discovered, right, these Mueller roads or boulevards or avenues or streets that have government buildings that are marked in the index, I have to tell you, I think Robert Mueller is really a billionaire. Like, if you sum all the points in these locations, and Mueller is not a very common last name. So if you sum all those points, I would guess it's in the billions, right? So that's interesting, right? You see him walking around in Lake Pone State, so you wouldn't, you wouldn't imagine that. But I guess that's the point, right? So anyhow, I think this opens a whole new project, right? A whole new line of inquiry, technical inquiry, into this geo-index, and to try to find these distributed ledgers of government officials or former government officials that are stored in these locations where offices of the government government buildings are, right? In the case of Robert Mueller's, they seem to be buildings of the state of Texas, specifically, right? I couldn't find today, I didn't put much effort into it, like I have to write a pipeline to do this at a scale, but I was looking for examples and I couldn't find federal buildings. Now, one case that is interesting is yeah, and I don't know, like I really have to do a lot more work on this, right? Like this is very early on, right? Like I just realized this today, so I might be short, right, on what I'm saying here. But one thing that I also related to this, right, that I always wondered, right? So, you know, like in this technique of putting the names to the streets, right, to store points, one thing that they do is that they also use the Levenstein distance, right? And I've talked about this metric in a few demos, right? So it's basically the edit distance between two strings. So, for example, it always caught my attention that the federal court in the Southern District of Texas, that court where I used to go a lot when I was doing my thing with with the two cases that I had in there before they killed them. That court is in a street called, so the address is 515 Rusk, R-U-S-K, right? And if you think about it, Rusk is, the distance to Musk is only 1, right? So and I always thought, well, maybe, and that building is marked. Like there's a lot of pointers in that building, right? A lot of points in the database, that the CPC and Diosdado Cabello used to harass everybody. So and knowing that, Elon is heavily involved in this, as I mentioned multiple times before, I thought, well, maybe this is, part of his positions, right? I mean, there's points in this Rusk building, which is a federal court. So, maybe what I'm trying to get at is that maybe the split is, the tech bros take the federal buildings for the layers, right, of their crypto positions. The state officials take the state buildings, right? The buildings that are on a street, state buildings that are on the streets that bear their name or small variations of their names. And the judges take the master plan communities and the apartment complexes, right? So this would put, if this is the case, right, because I would think that the federal buildings are more secure, right, in a way. Like if you're building, I think it feels like it's a tiered security system, right, for how secure the ledgers are. So I think the federal buildings would make a more secure ledger, right? If the database is ever discovered, as it happened, they were trying to say, like, come on, how can Elon Musk have, points in a federal building, right? Like, he has no relationship to the, well, he didn't have. Recently he had, because he got into into politics, right? But I don't know. It's something that I have to think more about, and I have to do more research and more analysis, right? But it seems like a tier system, really. Of distributed layers that are, so the sharding function is the type of building. There's a sharding function that implicitly tells the system, the system that the CPC uses to pay everybody, implicitly tells which department of the network this person works in, right? Like if it's a tech contributor, or if it's a intelligence contributor, or if it's a judiciary contributor. I guess that's the idea. And I don't know, like here I'm guessing, because I haven't seen the code, right, that they use, but I imagine that the conversion factor of points to actual, Bitcoin, for example, differs depending on I imagine, right, that a point in a federal building is worth more than a point in a state government building. And that is worth more than a point in in an apartment complex, right? Like the ones that store George Bell's positions. I don't know. It's just a guess, right? But I imagine there's different conversion factors, right? I mean, if I was building that, I would do it that way. So that's that. Um, Let me see what's next on my list. Yes. So next on my list is a project that I've been working on today. So today was a very interesting day. One of the problems that I had for a long time is how to engage the media. Okay. I have to tell you, I've tried in the past to pass this information, right, to multiple reporters in multiple media outlets. The Wall Street Journal, New York Times, like Forbes. When I tell you that, you may think, well, this person is crazy. No, I have to tell you that I've successfully published articles in these places before. Right? Not a lot of them, but in many similar places. Like when I was doing Key Opinion Leaders, I was able to successfully place articles in places like the Miami Herald, or Forbes, or things like that. Like high tier publications. Like I have experience doing this, right? It's not when I try to reach out to these journalists over the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, it wasn't it wasn't my first attempt at this, and I had been successful at this before, but in a different area, right? Before I was communicating about, I was publishing these articles about the technologies, and more about the technologies that I was developing, right? My startups. Not about the crimes that this organization is committing, right? So in that sense, this is new, right? But anyhow, what I wanted to tell you is that over the past few years, I've been trying to reach out to different journalists, right? And I always get ignored. Like I haven't been able to get one article across. So this is something that has been in my mind for a long time, right? Because at the end, right, the key to solve this problem part of the solution has to be public awareness, right? Because we're all part of society and we are all affected by this. Even if you don't see it right now, this is affecting your life and your freedom. So that has to be part of the solution, right? But of course, I recognize that it's a challenge to get that across, right? Because I've tried multiple times. So today I was thinking about this problem, right, in the morning. And I started thinking about it, and an idea formed in my head, right? I'm going to walk you through my train of thought, and I'm going to walk you through the entire process, right? Because this evolved during the day. But I'm going to start at the beginning. So at the beginning, I remember that, for example, I used to work for Goldman, right, for Goldman Sachs. And in Goldman Sachs, this is kind of a short story I'm going to give you, a side story, right, before I tell you what I did or what I thought. So at Goldman Sachs, the network set me up with a nemesis. And this is a TTP. This is actually that they do, right? This is a thing, right? Like when they have a target that they want to steal the code, the technology that they're developing. I'm talking about the CPC, right? The CCP. Yes, here. So when they have a target, they set you up with a nemesis at work. So the first thing is that they hire you, right? For example, they hire me at Google, at Yahoo, at Google, at Goldman Sachs, right? And in each one of these places, they set me up with a nemesis, I would call it, right? Like an adversary in a way, right? So somebody who is constantly opposing all the things that you try to do, right? If you propose a project, that person will say, no, that's not the way to do it, right? Somebody to antagonize you in a way, right? All the time. It's usually one main person. And this is a technique of harassment, just to keep you occupied fighting with this person, right? So you cannot do your startups that you're working on your own time, right? So at Goldman, my nemesis was a guy by the name, a man really, he's older than me. His name was Richard Bennett, right? And he's in a department called GIR, which is Global Investment Research, or he was the head of GIR, okay? And I was trying to push this search project, right, at Goldman forward. And he had a search engine. So GIR is a department that, and this is why this is relevant, because it's a department that handles news, financial news specifically. But they have their charter, their mandate is to understand the financial news and produce actionable intelligence for investors, right? So they are informed about what's going on, right? And they make recommendations and analysis and things like that, and they produce reports and things like that. So I was, pushing my search project forward, and he had a search engine, right, that they use for GIR, and he was opposing my search engine all the time. But that's not really the point of the story. But I want to tell you this so you understand how I knew this, right? So I know that these banks, like Goldman Sachs, they have a department that handles financial news, right? That process developments that happen in finance, and their mandate is to process them and produce intelligence and reports and analysis from that, right? And distribute that to investors. That's their job. So in a way, if you think about it, and this is where my train of thought started, right? If you think about it, these people are really like journalists, right? These people are going to cause an accident today. There's no doubt about that. This is the second time they do this today. But when I was in the highway, let me make a brief pause because this just happened. When I was in the highway, there was a car that almost crashed into me, and I, took a defensive measure on like taking the right lane to avoid he crashing into me. And when I did that, a police officer stopped me immediately, right? And the police officer started yelling at me, saying that I was driving aggressively. I was driving defensively. If I didn't do that, that person would have crashed into my car. But anyhow, the police asked me to roll down the windows. What he wanted to see is what I had in the back. And he illuminated with a flashlight the back. He's looking for the server. He wants to know what equipment I have running in the car. But of course, it's not visible. He's not going to say it. But I think that's what he wanted to do, right? And then he gave me a warning and he let me go. What he really wanted was to understand what is that I have in the car. But anyhow, and right now, this other car almost crashed into me as well, right? And there's another police officer here. Boy, the police is really working today. This one is 137-8694. Okay, so yes, so what I was telling you, right, about GIR. So these people are really like journalists, if you think about it, right? But these are a special type of journalists, because these are not any journalists. These are journalists that have a mandate because they work in a bank, right? And these banks are heavily regulated. So they have a mandate to disclose material information to investors, right? So I realized, well, this is an opening, right? Because I'm thinking at this point in the context of the patent applications that I described in the previous demo. For example, the idea could be, at this point in the morning, was, if I disclose the existence of these patents and the risk that these patents pose to the business models and the roadmaps of companies like NVIDIA, Intel, Microsoft, and Apple, to GIR at Goldman Sachs, to the head of GIR, they would be obligated, right, by law, by regulations, to disclose this information to the investors. They can't hide it, right? Because they have. This is it's a mandatory. It's a non-discretionary duty that they have, right? They are obligated, and if they don't, it's criminal. It would be a criminal offense if they don't. And the penalties are very severe. For the firm, there's penalties, and also for the head of GIR, for example, the person that comes across with the person responsible for the department, right? And the penalties depending on how grave the offense is and how much damage it causes to investors, right? But the penalties could go from from um, having to give back their own bonuses, right? The bonuses that they get paid at the firm, which in these financial companies is a lot of money. Like a big part of your compensation is the bonus. It's not the salary, it's the bonus, right? And that's the way they motivate people at those firms. So the penalties could range from having to give up your bonuses for multiple years in the back. They call it clawback. So say that you got, I don't know, X amount of money this year and last year, they can force you, I mean the regulators, right, can force you to give it back if you don't disclose the information. Um, and the penalties can range from that to even imprisonment, right, depending on the damage that the non-disclosure of the information causes. Um, so, um, at this point, I think, well, if I disclose this information to the head of EIR, that is not Richard Bennett anymore, right? I mean, Richard Bennett was when I was there in 2019, I think. But now it's a different person, somebody by the name Jan, I think it's Jan Hanitz or something like that with H. The last name is Hanitz, I think, something like that. Don't quote me, I might be misremembering the name. But yeah, this is interesting. Yeah, sorry, I'm just checking out some sensors. Um, So the idea that started forming in my head is, well, if I can use this to force disclosure, right? Maybe I don't have to reach the journalists. Maybe I can disseminate the information, making the banks disseminate the information for me because they have hundreds of thousands of investors, right? And if I give them the information, they have to first audit it, right? So the first thing they have to do is look. They have to do research. They have to, get somebody, a consultant or somebody who's qualified to tell them, yes, there is a material risk on these investments because of these patent applications, right? Or no, this is nothing to worry about, right? They could make that determination as well, right? But if then there's losses and they made that determination wrongly, that's also could be, there could be liability, right? Yeah, so here's where the sensors are, you see, in this street over here. And this street is this is interesting. Just 1 second, I'm just checking out something here. Yes. Okay. So yeah, so the idea is, make the banks do that work for me because, if they are obligated to disclose this to investors, among those investors, there's going to be journalists, right? And it's impossible that the network controls all these journalists that are potential investors, right? Because like in these banks, well, they sell a stock, so they have to disclose this to people that have those positions, right? Held by them, or even things like retirement funds, right? 401ks in the U.S. are called. Some of these funds buy Intel stock, right? So, they have to tell all the participants in the retirement plan that there is a risk. They're obligated to disclose it. And among those participants, because the journalists, they also have retirement plans, right? So among those participants, there are going to be some that are going to be journalists, right? And so at that point, the bank is doing the work for me. The work of reaching out to all the journalists at a scale, right? That's the idea. to distribute that work instead of me reaching out to individual journalists, making the bank reach in bulk, right, to journalists and non-journalists as well, right? Somebody will talk to a journalist, right, when they see this. So that's how the idea started, right? But then it evolved, right? Because after I thought of this, I said, well, but besides, the banks, the investment banks, sorry, 1 second. Yes, here. So besides the investment banks, maybe I can also do the same thing with retirement, with institutional investors, right? So I don't know if this is something that is universal, but at least here in the US, there is this concept of, and by the way, all these things I've learned at Goldman Sachs, right? I wouldn't know any of this if they hadn't hired me at Goldman Sachs. So in the US, at least, there is this concept called institutional investors. And the idea here is that, for example, there's groups like unions or, teachers, the group of teachers that are hired by the state of California, things like that, right? And then, as a group, they fund an investment fund, right? So all the teachers contribute, for example, in California, and they have a name. And this is actually a governmental. It's run by some sort of or I don't know if it's governmental or hybrid structure, right? Yes, for example, the Teachers Association in California, right? So that organization, they have an investment fund, and they have a lot of stock of Intel, like several, I don't know if it's hundreds of millions of dollars. Like it's a lot of money, right? Specifically in Intel and Nvidia stock. So of course this is material information for them, right? So what I did, I prepared a letter that tells them about the existence of these patents and that these patents pose a market risk to Intel, where they have a huge investment, and they have a fiduciary duty to conduct an audit to see if this is something to worry about, and if they determine that it is, then they have to tell their investors. And when they do this due diligence research, one of the things that they have to do is they have to contact Intel, right? I mean, part of the due diligence has to be contacting the issuer of the stock, right? I mean, Intel or Nvidia, and get what is their take on it, right? Yes. 1 second. I'm just trying to understand something here that doesn't make much sense to me. I see. Oh, I understood. Wow, these people are inventive. So see, this is the reason. I understand. Oh my God, I don't know how I didn't see this before. This is the reason why next to each antenna they always place a storage facility. Because in the storage facility they put the cars inside of the storage, which are the sensors, right? And if they weaken, because those storage facilities, they're like garages, right? And the doors, this actually could be a signal for detection, right? That they're doing this, because the doors are usually metallic, but if they're metallic, they're going to block the signal, so they can't have that. So I imagine they intentionally weaken the doors of these storage facilities that are next to the antennas, so the signals can pass through the doors and can hit the cars that are inside. So, right, if you build this storage facility, and you basically have, all the space you want to put all the cars you want in a very specific arrangement, right? Like, I mean, You don't have to worry about parking the cars correctly because the alignment is given by the storage facility itself, right? By the individual garages. They're already aligned. So in this antenna, by the way, I'm in the same area where I recorded the demo D127 when I saw the sensors, right? So next to that important antenna, there is a huge storage facility full of garages, right? And imagine if you open those garages, they're going to be full of cars, right? With the Chinese equipment installed. That's what it is. But the other thing that I was going to tell you that doesn't make much sense to me is that I see that there is an empty lot next to this thing, right? So I thought, well, but I thought that they were not covering the antenna on this direction because if it's an empty lot, they cannot have another apartment complex there. But I see why, because they're covering that side of the antenna with the self-storage facility. You see? So if they didn't have the self-storage facility, they would have to have another complex apartment building on this side, with with the cars arranged in that fashion that they have in the other side. But because they have the storage facility, then they don't need the outside parking of the cars. They have the cars probably parked inside of the storage facility. That's what they're doing. But you see, the technique is basically surround antennas, right? With these cars with the Chinese espionage machine installed. But anyhow, back to the conversation. This was actually an interesting observation. Back to the conversation, right? The idea is to send this information not only to GIR at Goldman Sachs. By the way, I sent it to like 5 major banks, not only Goldman Sachs, right? I sent it to Bank of America, Citigroup, to the equivalents of, in each bank, this department has a different name, right? The name is arbitrary. At Goldman Sachs, it's called GIR, but in other places, it's called something else, okay? But I sent similar letters to 5 major banks: Citigroup, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, and two other more, right? I sent it to Vanguard, and I think I sent it to Fidelity as well. I can't recall. But that's the idea, right? So they will have to do an audit, right? To do due diligence, and part of this audit has to be asking Intel the question. They have to consult the issuer. They cannot only trust what I'm saying, right? They have to get the two sides of the story. And in this interaction, Intel, the issuer of the stock, is going to come into contact with material information being provided directly by major investors, right? Institutional investors. I mean, these are institutions that hold several $1 million worth of stock, right? It's not a small guy that has $1,000 in stock. So they have to respond. I mean, they have to respond to everybody, regardless of how much stock they have by law. But if it's an institutional investor, they have more pull, right? Because they can say, well, if you don't give me the answer, I'm going to pull the stock, right? And that would cause serious damage to Intel. So they can't have that. They have to respond. So you see, so this is escalating really quickly, right? So I sent a letter to the institutional investors as well. But don't leave, because it gets better. Then, after I'm on this path, right, I thought, well, but now that I'm doing this, I mean, if I'm notifying the banks and if I'm notifying the institutional investors, I might as well notify them directly. I mean, Nvidia and Intel, right? I mean, because they, I mean, and I know they know, because I've got this from the gossip, right? Like this gossip that is circulating in the air from the conversations that they among them are leaking and giving to people that at the end ends up, being public information, right? So, I mean, it's already public information that they know that the patents exist, right? The patent applications exist and were filed. So this is, public knowledge at this point. But I might as well put them on notice, so they cannot say, "Oh no, we didn't know." Like, I mean, in reality, I will have no way to prove that they know, right? What I'm hearing is gossip, basically, but I don't have hard proof that they know, right? So the idea came into my mind to put them in notice as well, because now that I'm doing this, right, and I'm already notifying the banks, and remember, my goal at the end is that the public is informed, because and the angle here is that they, as issuers of the stock, they also have an obligation to disclose material risk to their investors, right? Because the public is the investor. I mean, everybody who has a stock of Intel is investing in Intel. And if there is a market risk, they have to tell them. They cannot hide this information, right? I mean, it would be criminal to hide it. So I sent letters to NVIDIA, for example, to the CEO and to the legal department, right? Notices with copies of the patent applications that are relevant to what I'm saying, right? So I sent that. And now that I sent it to NVIDIA and sent it to Intel, I thought, well, I can also send it to Apple, right? Because Apple has the same problem that, not problem, right? But their microprocessors are based on serial communication buses, right? And with this new technology that is described in these patent applications, that could be rendered obsolete or, challenged heavily. I sent the same letters to Apple. At Apple, I said I don't have the names with me, but I sent it to the CEO, Mr. Tim Cook. I sent it to the General Counsel. I sent it to the General Counsel. I sent it to the SVP of hardware development. And I also sent it to the people that are working on the environmental pledges, because these patent applications have implications on energy consumption. The reason is because now you're transmitting data in parallel, you can lower the clock speed. And if you lower the clock speed, the computers consume much less power. I did some math on this, and don't quote me on the math. My math might be wrong, but I believe to achieve a similar computing power, you have to spend only 25% of the power if you use this optical interface. So it would save 75% of the energy that the world is consuming right now in computing, in data centers, in computers, in everything, right? If we migrate to this technology. So it's a huge energy saving, right? And if you think about it, who are the countries that benefit from the energy expenditure of these inefficient serial buses? China, Venezuela, Iran, and Russia. Right? So, I should probably send these to the oil companies as well, to China Petroleum Corporation and to Citgo and etc., because this is a risk to them. If the world all of a sudden start consuming 75 less oil in computing energy, they have to tell their investors as well, no? I'm guessing. I would see it as a risk if I was them. And whoever buys their sovereign funds and their sovereign bonds and all those things, they have to tell them, right? So I don't know. I think that could probably be a good thing for me to explore. But it was interesting. Now, I also did, I skipped one step. I didn't tell you about this. But before, going to the tech companies, I also sent letters to the NFL and other sports franchises. Because these tech companies like NVIDIA and Intel, they are big sponsors, right? And, they even run hardware. And Akamai, for example, who is mentioned in that demo, and, I created a report to the OFAC mentioning all these things that I saw about Akamai, right? And I have hard documentation, like I have emails from Akamai, right? That prove their involvement. So I sent all that to the OFAC, and that is a risk to the NFL because they're running Akamai things there's things that run in the NFL in their corporate offices and also in their stadiums that use Akamai. So, this is a huge reputational risk to them and to their fan base, and to their sponsors, to the other sponsors. So they have to know, and they have to tell everybody who could be affected. So I also sent this to the NFL, and I sent it to the World Cup, right? To the World Cup organizers. Now here I have to tell you, I was in shock when I saw this. I didn't know this, but it turns out that the World Cup, which is coming up very soon, has a huge, I mean, the organization of it is very, how do I say this? I don't know if the word would be centered, right? But it's heavily, it's heavily tied to Harris County, to this place where I am, right? Like the organizers, the CEO and the general counsel, I think it is. I mean, at least two of the people involved the CEO of the Harris County Sports Authority is involved in the World Cup organization, and the legal counsel of I think it's the legal counsel of the Harris County Sports Authority is also involved in the organization, right, of the World Cup. And also there's two representatives in Congress, and one of those representatives is the representative of Harris County. So Harris County, for some reason, is going to play a major role in the World Cup. And this is a huge risk for the World Cup organization as a whole, because I mean, these people, I mean, I don't know, consider for a second, imagine that I succeed at reaching out to authorities or to journalists or however, right? If I'm able to get this information out before the World Cup, imagine what's going to happen, right? I mean, there might be matches organized in this area, right? So I don't know. It seems to me like something material that the World Cup needs to disclose to their investors and, I don't know, to the people that are organizing these matches, right? Seems like a huge risk to me that needs to be addressed, right? Or at least analyzed by them. So I also sent the letters to the World Cup. I mean, to this set of people, right, that I'm describing. The CEO of the Sports Authority in Harris County, the legal counsel, and to all these people that I'm describing, what I sent is a copy of the relevant patents and a copy of the transcript of demo D127, which is the demo that I did before this one, where I describe all these things, right? So they're in knowledge, right? They're in knowledge of the situation, not only of the patents, but also of the involvement of the Communist Party of China in the things that they're doing with this network, right? That could affect their interest. I mean, the interest of these organizations. So that's what I did. But going back to the tech companies, I also sent it to. This is strange. I also sent it to Apple, and I sent it to Microsoft as well, because Microsoft has Azure, which is the cloud computing unit, and all Windows runs in Intel and AMD processors, right? That could be affected by these patent applications. I mean, could be rendered obsolete, right? So the entire Windows ecosystem, I don't know, I imagine, right, could see potential risk in this development of these patent applications. So I, of course, sent letters to Microsoft as well, right, to the chairman, to the legal counsel, to the vice chair, to all these people, right? So I don't know. I'm curious to see what they're going to do, right? I'll have to tell you, in the previous, for example, in the case of Goldman Sachs, this is not the first thing I send them. I send them also something from the angle of the human resource department, right? And I described this in one of the previous demos. When Troy Pickett created the void order to, seize my bank accounts, I sent Goldman Sachs a notice to the HR department in case Troy Pickett tried to seize anything that I may have pending in human resources, right, or payroll there. And I also sent them another notice from the perspective of them being my bank, because I have an account at Marcos. So at this point, Goldman Sachs has received 3 different notices about this situation with the Communist Party of China and the espionage of the tech bros, being done by the tech bros, right? And now they are in knowledge of the patent applications that could disrupt important companies that they have a lot of investments and positions in. Right? So I don't know if they don't, if none of these venues cause a disclosure of Goldman Sachs or by Goldman Sachs of this information. I don't know, right? I'm guessing it could be problematic, right? So that's the that's the development, right? But I don't know. It was an interesting day because I don't know. It was an interesting turn of events, right? That this idea developed in my mind because in a way these patent applications could help me solve a long-standing problem that I haven't been able to solve for years, right? Which is, how do I force disclosure, right? Or how? I mean, not force, because when you're talking to journalists, you cannot force them, right? They have discretion on what to publish, but how do I make this likely to be published, right, in mass media? I also, by the way, I also send these letters, similar letters, to the Wall Street Journal, because they are in, they're a publication that specializes in high finances, and people that make those investment decisions, many of them read the Wall Street Journal. So in a way, they have a fiduciary duty to their readers, right, to tell them what's going on. So I sent this to two important people at the Wall Street Journal. Actually at the parent company of the Wall Street Journal. So they will also have that very soon, in a matter of 2 or 3 days. So it seems like a very flexible tool for me to leverage. The patent applications, right? Because I can keep doing this with every possible company, not restricted to technology. As you can see, I can send this to the NBA, to the NFL, to these people are gonna cause an accident today with these trucks. I can send this to any number of sport franchises, TV stations. Another good example are, these, I don't know if you've seen these finance shows, like the Mad Money, for example, show, right? Where they talk about these shows that specialize in investment. They also, because they are talking about investments, if they come across material information, they have to disclose it. They cannot, they can interpret it in different ways, right? They can give their own spin to the information, but they have to disclose it. They can't, sit on it, right? So, for example, I could send this information to the Mad Money guy, right? Things like that. So there's a lot of avenues that I can explore with this. But I don't know. Let's see what happens. But it was a super interesting development, right? And kind of funny, because if you think about it, right, what I'm doing is attacking them with the patent applications, right? So that's interesting. Let me see here. What else do I have? Oh yes. So now I'm going to talk more about on the ground things, right? So at the end of the last demo, if you look at the video, I put in there footage about this incident that happened at the Shell gas station next to the FBI headquarters in Houston, where there was this man, I think he's Venezuelan. And when I opened the door to get out of my car, he almost put his phone inside of my car. Almost. It was centimeters away. He placed the camera of his phone to be able to record the inside of the car, right? But very close to the inside of the car. He almost got the phone inside. And I took, I have footage, right? Because my car has cameras, right? So I put that footage at the end of the video, demo D128, and I described the incident. But when I ingested the demo into the pipeline, the incident got flagged as well, and co-clustered with 2 previous incidents. One incident was a few months back around the headquarters of a company called Blinds.com here in Houston, Texas. And this company is heavily marked in the index. I was going there because I was going to check out the cars, right? Because the score is so high, it's 4 million points or something like that. So I was going there to see the cars, and he was parked outside of Blinds.com, waiting for me, right? The same person in the same car. It's a BMW. It's a black BMW, M series, like the sporty version of the BMWs, right? But this is kind of, this is just an observation of mine, right? But I think, I think this is the mistake he made, right? Like, he obviously seems to be in love with that car because all the agents rotate their cars, but he doesn't rotate his car. He's always driving that BMW, right? So that makes it recognizable, right? It's kind of funny also because, that BMW, I don't know, this is just my opinion, right? But this is, I know this depends on taste, and, everybody has different tastes, but to me, that those BMWs look like cars that want to be sporty cars, but like, to me they look more. And I don't mean to be sexist or anything, right? But to me, that car looks like a car that my sister would drive, right? Like, I don't know. He's in love with that car, obviously, right? Because he's driving that car all the time. So, but then he gets flagged, right? So, but the interesting thing is that this same Venezuelan agent was following me at blinds.com months ago, and now he was following me in the Shell gas station next to the FBI. I mean, these people really have, I don't know what's the word for that, confidence, I mean, you are an unregistered foreign agent working in the United States illegally, and you are conducting espionage next to the FBI. I mean, they are asking for it, and then not only that, he almost gets the phone inside of my car, right, and gets recorded by the cameras of the car. I mean, it's crazy the level of confidence they have. To be honest, it borders on stupidity. To be honest, but that's not the only incident. There was another incident in which this was like around, I think, I can't recall the date. I think it was May or June 2025, or June or July, I can't recall. So it was at the Walmart at the FM 1093 in Katy, close to my home at Valleyside Drive. And sorry, these trucks are really going to cause a problem today. So So what happened in that incident was that I pulled into the parking lot of how do you say that, of Walmart, right? And the moment I park, the same BMW parked next to me, but this time it wasn't him driving the BMW. It was a lady, a woman, a young woman, I would say late 20s. Now, I have to tell you about this man. You can see the photos in the pictures in the video of them of D127, but and I'm going to also publish him in the book, the photos. But he's interesting because he has a lot of tattoos, right? And I don't mean to, I don't mean to, I know people, it's a choice, right? That some people like to get tattoos, and but he has a lot of tattoos in his neck and like his face, like it's a lot. And it reminds me, this is a cultural thing, but back in Venezuela, there is an organization, a criminal organization that is called El Tren de Aragua. And this is interesting because El Tren de Aragua, I believe, was recognized by the United States as a terrorist organization. And I'm saying this because the members of El Tren de Aragua in Venezuela, which at this point is an international criminal organization, they have spread to multiple countries. It's not only in Venezuela, but they originated in Venezuela a decade ago, right? The members of this organization, of this criminal gang, a lot of them have this kind of tattoos, like the ones that he have, right? So I don't know. I'm not an expert in tattoos. I don't know. Maybe what he has is something different, right? But it looks like that. It looks like he could be part of that group, right? By the tattoos that I saw in the two occasions that I saw him personally, right? The one at blinds.com and the one on March 16th. At the Shell gas station next to the FBI. So it could be that he is a member of the Tren de Aragua. Now, if that's the case, that would be nuclear, because then, it would tie all these agents that are doing this here locally directly to an organization that is recognized by the federal government as a terrorist organization. It would give me serious ammunition, right? Against the judges specifically, right? Because these people are doing this to extract information that the judges use to keep the child kidnapped. So it would be nuclear, right, if that was the case. Now, but I have to tell you, that incident with that lady is interesting, right? Because, I mean, that time he sent that woman in his car. I imagine could be the girlfriend, right? So, I mean, it could be the same TTP of Andres Mendez, right? Andres Salvador Mendez. Where he sent the wife, right? Maybe it's the wife, because that's their thing, right? They send the wife. But this lady intercepted me inside the Walmart at an aisle where there is a specific item that I used to eat a lot. I used to consume that frequently. It's something it's like what they call in English, the translation I think is devil ham, right? So there is an aisle where they have this particular devil ham of a brand name Underwood. I'm saying this in case authorities look at that footage, right? You will see that what I'm telling you is exactly like this. And all this, by the way, got flagged by software, right? I wouldn't be able to remember this from months ago. It's because at that time I was carrying the cameras with me when I went to the stores, and I got the footage, right? And I also had the cameras in the car, and I have the footage of the car in the parking lot of the Walmart. But anyhow, this lady, which I would say is an attractive woman, right? I mean, it's not physically attractive, but she had a feature that, I don't know, when I saw it, it was, I don't know, she had tattoos in her face as well. And she had some tattoos that were like tears. So she had tears tattooed in her face. And I don't know, like, I don't mean to sound judgmental or anything, right? But to me, it was shocking. I mean, I've never seen a woman with tears tattooed in her face. That's something that I've never been exposed to. Maybe it's something that is common in other cultures or in other places. I don't know. But in the circles or social circles where I've, moved all my years in this earth, I've never seen that before, right? So when I saw it, it was shocking to me. I mean, it was like shocking is not the word. It was kind of I don't know if this translates well in English, but in Spanish, I would say something like cognitive dissonance, right? Like it's something that you're seeing it, but it doesn't make sense, like seeing this attractive woman with the face tattooed with tears tattooed in her face. Like, I don't know, it just didn't compute, right, in my head. But anyhow, she intercepted me there. Like, the thing where the thing that they do, right? That at this point, I know how it works. So I imagine, it was a plant, right? He wanted me to talk to his wife or to his girlfriend. I don't know exactly what the relationship is, but it's all, I mean, she was driving his personal car that he obviously loves, that car, because he drives it everywhere, right? Like he gets recorded driving that car multiple times. So I don't know, if he loves the car and he gives the car to this lady, I have to imagine that it's his, girlfriend at least, or wife, I don't know, right? But he sent her to make contact, make a small conversation with me at this particular food aisle. So but it's interesting, right? So and I asked this question to the informant, but he doesn't know. He's trying to figure out if he's part of the Trendaragua or not. But if I get that information, I'll tell you. But so far, it's a question until now. It's not. The other thing I want to tell you is that the informant told me that there is something in the works with the tax return again. And this, I'm not going to repeat the entire sequence because it's a long story, but I already mentioned this in previous demos. So I filed the tax return for the year 2024. I filed it late because of the situation that I am, right? I filed it at the end of November, and I sent it by mail because the filing window to file electronically was already closed. And I sent it to the Austin office of the IRS. And after I sent it within 24 hours, if I recall correctly, the informant told me what it contained, and this network audited the tax return and found a weakness in something that I did wrong, right? Because I did this on my home, because I obviously cannot go to an accountant for obvious reasons, right? They will make a mistake intentionally. They've done this before to get me in trouble with the IRS, right? So I had to do it myself. And I made a mistake, and they noticed the mistake. But anyhow, I received a letter some time ago saying that I have not filed the tax return. So not only they intercepted the tax return, they stopped it. They didn't deliver it to the IRS, right? Or somehow they got it lost, quote unquote, inside of the IRS. I don't know. I don't know how they did it. But the informant told me that they're planning to do something with that. They're going to trigger an action, or they're trying to trigger an action with the IRS based on that they supposedly haven't filed the tax return. But I have to tell you, I did file it, and I have the receipt that I filed it. I mean, that I sent it. And I also paid the taxes. I paid the owing amount in full. I think I even overpaid. Um, so but I'm recording this here just in case they do this, right? The other thing the informant told me as well today was that there is another thing that is in motion. It has to do with the rules of the ring, and I've described this already 2 times before. The first time was like a year and a half. The first time they were going to do it, and then they tried to do it again, or were thinking of doing it again, like I don't know, 9 months ago. And I recorded a demo, and I talked about this before. But the informant told me that again, they are going to try to do the rules of the ring. And so, because I've already described it 2 times, I'm not going to go too much into details here. But the idea was, the rules was that Ana Codallo, I was engaged to Ana Codallo like 20 years ago, right? Ana Codallo, who is now married to Aidan Gagnon, and she's the daughter of Peter Codallo. And, she's been working for this network since day one, right? So we were engaged, right? So, and we had I gave her a ring, and the ring was insured, and she lost the ring at some point, right? And then she reported the ring to the insurance, and she got a check herself for the ring, for the value of the ring, right? And my parents at some point went to Canada. They were visiting. I can't recall it. This was like 23 years ago, right? But long story short, when my parents went back to Venezuela, the ring appeared in their luggage. It was misplaced, right? And at that point, she already had cashed the check from the insurance. So the ring was there. What could I do? The ring was already reported to the. I don't know if it was the insurance, the police. I can't recall, to be honest. But apparently, and so my parents are not even in Venezuela anymore, and the ring should be in Venezuela. I mean, I never, they didn't sell the ring. They didn't monetize that ring in any way. Nobody used that ring. I will have to ask where is that ring, right? And the interesting thing is, right, so they're going to do something with that. Like, apparently they went to Venezuela, but this is interesting because if this is what they did, if they have the ring here in the US to do something with the ring, I don't know what it is, right, that they're going to do. But if they have the ring here, that is actually evidence that they are working for Josaro Cabello. Because how can they go to Venezuela to obtain this object of something that happened 20 years ago and that was in Venezuela, right? I don't know. It would just be evidence, right, against them. But apparently they're planning to do something with that ring, right? I don't know exactly what it is. There's another police officer behind me. I don't know. It seems like I'm attracting a lot of police cars these days. Yeah, so we're at the Bookies gas station, like this gas station that is always teeming with life and people and cameras and Chinese interception equipments and things like that. And cars at the pump that are not really pumping gas. I don't know if you've noticed this. So interesting. It's like a different planet. But yes, so apparently there is something going on with that ring, and I imagine, right? Like if they're, but I don't know. Like I'll have to ask my mom. How could they possibly do something with that? I mean, what is the Uh, I don't know, because my parents are in Canada. Like, they live in Canada. They've been in Canada for years. That house is abandoned in Venezuela, right? So it means that they broke into the house of my parents in Venezuela, because I think that that house is vacant. Um, I imagine, right, that they must have broken into the house, or something else, right? I don't know exactly what is that they're gonna do, but it's something with that ring. Let me see what else I have in here. The tax return, the ring, the Tren de Aragua guy. Yeah, so I think that's all I have for today. Um, so with this, I'm gonna close this demo 128, and I'll see you on the next one. Okay.